the first ever dual masters in liberal arts and sciences from Tianhai University. Yet upon opening his eyes, he found himself transmigrated into an ancient peasant boy, living in a thatched cottage, eating throat-scratching wheat cakes, and drinking sour, spoiled vinegar water. But Wang Ping refused to accept fate, since all pursuits are inferior except studying. Then I shall rise from a field hand at dawn to the emperor's hall at dusk. But now, with these blistered feet and tearful whining, I'm barely holding it together. The only dual masters in liberal arts and sciences from Tianhai University debated fiercely in my thesis defense, stunning everyone then. With a blink of my eyes, I became a newborn baby, and my furious cursing turned into a loud wail. Wah! I was dumbstruck on the spot, transmigrated. After being forced to accept reality over this time, lying in my swaddle, I couldn't stop grinning. No phones, no computers, no papers or advisors, just fresh air, magnificent mountains and rivers, and that purest kind of family love I never experienced in my past life as an orphan. Heavens, you've really done me in. As days passed, I gradually discovered that I was born with knowledge of this language. In my past life, graduate school had ruined me beyond recognition. In this life, I've completely given up taking things as they come. What? You ask if I'm embarrassed about nursing? Seriously, I'm just a little kid now. I was cheerful all day, smiling at everyone. This happy-go-lucky grandson, who ate and slept well, quickly became the Wang family's absolute treasure. A month later, I could finally see clearly. I looked at the young woman, holding me, her eyes brimming with love. At that moment, a wave of sadness suddenly washed over me. Is this motherly love? In my past life, did my mother ever look at me like this? I stared at her blankly, my little face full of grievance. Lady Zhang, seeing her usually cheerful son now looking so pitiful, felt a pang in her heart. Then her eyes suddenly lit up. Oh, my precious little darling. Why are you so hungry? Don't cry, eat quickly. With that, she shoved the breast into my mouth. Mother, no. But my pleas sounded like crying to Lady Zhang, only making her feed me all the more eagerly. After a long while, I lay in the thatched cottage, staring blankly at the ceiling. When Zhangshi picked me up, I waved my little hands and burst into cheerful laughter. Another half-year passed, and through my relentless cute assault, I finally figured out the family situation. It was now the Great Xian dynasty, which didn't match any dynasty in Chinese history. The reign title was Xian, and the second emperor was on the throne. The world was at peace, with light taxes and corvée. As for why I had transmigrated, it probably had something to do with what the villagers said. Before I was born, a wandering Taoist priest passed by, pointed at Zhangshi's belly, and said, "This child will surely achieve great things in the future." That single sentence, in this feudal era, became a prophecy held as a golden rule in the Wang family's hearts. Grandmother Zhao directly decreed that after the child was weaned, she would personally raise him. 5 years passed in the blink of an eye. Over the years, I had been trailing behind my grandfather, father, and uncles every day, asking questions about everything from the name of the big tree at the doorstep, to which village we belonged to, and even the current political situation. At first, they answered cheerfully, but as my questions grew trickier, they simply fled. Only my cousin Wang Xiang, though he didn't understand my questions, often told me amusing stories from the town. The Wang family lived in Little Wang Village, Liuxiang Town, Jiyuan County, Qingzhou Prefecture in the north. They had 50 mu of allocated farmland and 20 mu of inherited land. I counted on my fingers and thought, good heavens. Fertile land yields 2 or 3 shur of grain per mu altogether that had to be tens of thousands of caddies. The Wang family had fewer than 10 members no matter how much they ate. There would be leftovers. But after strolling around the village, I realized that what they called 50 mu were actually half barren mountains and wild fields. At that time, the Xian dynasty was stable, the emperor benevolent. Taxes were 1 in 12 for farmland and 1 in 30 for wasteland. Yet even so, after paying the land tax each year and setting aside seeds and rations for the next year, plus a shur or 2 for emergencies, the family only had 4 or 5 shur left. Now the grain price was no more than 6 qian per shur, so total income was about 3 liang of silver at most. Everything depended on the weather. That day, I sat on the earthen doorstep in hemp clothes, resting my chin on my hand, watching the drooping willow branches sway in the wind, feeling immensely melancholy. My dream of a peaceful pastoral life was shattered. Little Pinger, why are you sitting here? You'll catch a cold. It's fine, Grandma. I just helped my elder sister shoo away the chickens. I'll leave soon. I stretched out my pinky finger to gesture. As for the origin of my name, it's quite a coincidence. Grandpa served in the army when he was young. When the troops returned triumphantly, the common people lined the streets cheering. He overheard two officials say, "A real man should bring order to his family, govern the country, and pacify the world." Grandpa was deeply shaken. Coupled with the prophecy of the Taoist priest before I was born, I was named Wang Ping. Grandpa probably wanted me to become that kind of person. Just then, Grandma hurried out with a bamboo basket. I looked up at the sky. The sun was glaring. The early autumn heat was suffocating. "Grandma, where are you going?" "To the fields. Your grandpa and the others haven't eaten yet." "Be good, Xiao Pinger. I'll steam an egg for you when I get back." I frowned at the scorching sun and asked innocently, "Why don't Grandpa and the others come back?" "It's too hot," sighed Zhao helplessly. "When the sun sets, you won't be able to see anything. Then I want to go see them. Can we go another time?" "Grandma can't carry you." "Don't worry, Pinger can walk by herself. The fields aren't far from the Wang family's place." Zhao sure looked at me with concern, but seeing the little one was so persistent, she had no choice but to carry a bamboo basket in one hand and a bucket in the other, while holding my hand with the other, leading me out. Along the way, the dirt road was full of potholes. My worn-out cloth shoes and the scorching heat constantly tempted me to give up. But I clenched my silver teeth tightly, and even as large beads of sweat fell, I didn't utter a single sound. I'm a dignified dual master's degree holder. After enduring so many years of schooling, how could I not withstand a short walk? "Come on, Wang Ping." Finally, we made it to the fields. In the golden wheat fields, the chirping of grasshoppers and crickets rose and fell. The wind blew, turning the entire expanse into a golden ocean. Grandpa was bare-chested, his dark, shiny body reflecting the sunlight. When he saw Grandma and me, he smiled warmly, his white beard hidden in the wrinkles of his beaming face. "Little Pinger is here too." I greeted them one by one, then picked up a broken wooden bowl, filled it with cold water, and went to the shade of a tree by the ridge of the field. I sat down leaning against the tree trunk, furrowed my brows, and stared blankly into space. Grandma set out the bowls and chopsticks on the ridge and called the three of them to eat. Just as I was dazed, my head was suddenly tapped twice. Dad came over, sweat dripping down, but he still made a funny face to scare me. "You little rascal, what are you thinking? Hurry up and give your grandpa your seat." I quickly stood up, supporting myself on the tree. "Grandpa, come sit by Pinger. There's a big tree behind Ping." All right, I'll listen to my Ping," Grandpa said with a chuckle as he sat down and pulled me into his arms. I made faces at Dad, even making Uncle laugh. The meal had no lavish meat or fish, only some wheat cakes with the husk still on, which scratched the throat when eaten. Grandpa picked up a cake to feed me, but I waved my hands repeatedly. "Grandpa and Uncle eat first. Pinger isn't hungry." Grandpa was taken aback. "Why is it right for us to eat first?" "Because Grandpa and Uncle are elders. Mother taught me to respect the old and care for the young. Besides, only when you are full will Pinger have food to eat in the future." Grandpa gently stroked my head with his rough hand, feeling greatly comforted. At that moment, Grandma took a small clay pot from the bamboo basket and evenly poured some black liquid into each of their bowls. A faint, sour smell wafted out. The three were used to it and drank it down in one go. I knew there was vinegar cloth water. Salt was scarce. It was expensive and limited in supply, so poor families simply couldn't afford it. The vinegar cloth from the general store was a lifesaver on this scorching summer day. A bowl of vinegar cloth water could keep you alive. Grandpa affectionately ruffled my hair and stood up. "Little Ping, Grandpa's going to cut the wheat. You go back with Grandma in a bit." Watching their stooped figures walk away, I nodded silently. Later that day, Grandma carried me home on her back. The moment I saw Mom at the courtyard gate, I felt a huge wave of grievance, and my little face crumpled. Mom quickly took me from Grandma, who set down the bamboo basket, her face full of guilt. Just then, Aunt put down her flax stalks and walked over worriedly, lifting my little cloth shoes gently. A few small blisters had formed on my tender soles. Aunt gasped, her expression pained. My mom's heart felt as if pricked by needles, but she forced herself to stay calm, silently telling herself over and over. Xiao Ping'er was a farmer's son, destined to work the fields in the future, which would only be harder than now. He had to bear it. But as he thought this, tears still brimmed in his eyes. Before he could react, Grandma began to sob softly, and then Mother and Aunt joined in crying as well. Startled by this scene, he thought, "What? I haven't even cried yet, and you all are already in tears." Without time to complain, he endured the pain in his feet and used his tiny hands to wipe away tears left and right. "Don't cry, Grandma. Your grandson is fine. Don't cry. Aunt, your nephew is hale and hearty. Don't cry, Mother. Xiao Ping'er really isn't in pain." Seeing them cry even harder the more he tried to console them. Even he, a dual master's degree holder from the 21st century, was at a loss. Watching his own small hands swing so fast they seemed to leave afterimages, he suddenly understood. Wang Ping, the dual degree scholar, might be helpless, but Wang Ping, the farmer's son, might have a way after all. And so a piercingly loud wah exploded across the yard, startling all the birds in the trees into flight. The three women fell silent at once. "Little brother, what's wrong? What's wrong?" Sister Wang Chui was the first to rush over. Holding a small wooden stick, looking like a true heroine. "Don't be afraid. Little brother, big sister is here." Cousin Wang Xia balanced a clay pot on her head, her eyes full of vigilance. When the two older sisters saw that the three adults were present and that their little brother was safe in their aunt's arms, they relaxed and turned to look with curiosity. They saw their little brother slyly wink at them, then continue wailing loudly. "Grandma, Aunt, Mother, Ping'er's foot hurts." The three women immediately stopped crying and anxiously looked around. "You two girls, can't you be gentler? Didn't you hear your brother say his foot hurts? Go fetch hot water quickly." The two girls stuck out their tongues. They joined hands and ran off. Soon, inside the thatched hut, they heard, with a soft hiss, "Mother gently popped the blister on my foot." I looked up in grievance, seeing the ceiling made of mud and thatch above my head. Around me were family members full of concern, and at my feet was a stinging wound. A wave of sorrow welled up in my heart. In the evening, the sky was growing dark. The autumn wind rustled, and leaves swished down. I was lying on a low wooden bed, watching the ants on the ground. Just then, a sound came from the courtyard. Grandpa and the rest had returned. "Grandpa, you're back." We're back. But where's little Ping?" "I caught a huge grasshopper for him." Wang Ping turned his head and saw that Wang Chui had woken up. Wang Chui, to avoid doing needlework under the pretense of looking after her little brother, had fallen fast asleep as soon as Zhang and the others left. Among them, Wang Xia came in to call Wang Chui, but seeing that Wang Chui wasn't leaving, she copied her and lay down beside Wang Ping for a while. This kind of stolen leisure time was rare. At that moment, Wang Ping and Wang Chui exchanged a glance. Wang Chui quickly got up, put on her straw sandals, and shouted into the yard. "Grandpa, Dad, little brother has blisters on his feet." Old man Wang, who had been smiling in the yard, was startled by the news and immediately rushed toward the second son's house. Wang Youfa and Wang Ingxiong were baffled. How could little Ping suddenly get blisters out of nowhere? So they followed in quick steps, taking 3 strides in 2. Soon, sighs echoed from the house. Old man Wang looked at his little grandson's tender feet, feeling a deep ache in his heart. That evening, old Wang also lost his temper for the first time. Granny Zhao, instead of her usual nagging at old Wang, just sat aside, quietly wiping her tears. The 2 daughters-in-law were comforting Granny Zhao, and the 2 sons were patting old Wang's back. Wang Ping, staying in the room, watched the flickering flame and felt an indescribable emotion. In his previous life, he was an orphan. Fortunately, the country was prosperous and the welfare system was well developed, so he had the opportunity to grow up in an orphanage. Later, when he grew up, due to his excellent academic performance, he was fortunate to receive help from kind-hearted people. In addition, through work study, he was able to enter university and then get admitted to graduate school. In that province where arts and sciences were separated, becoming a double master's in both arts and sciences at university was a sensation at that time. Time flew by. After a few years, he, the high-profile double master's holder, graduated successfully. Even just for this title, countless local companies would be eager to hire him. It was nothing more than a case of buying a horse's bones with 1,000 gold. But just when he was climbing the ladder of success, marrying a beautiful and rich woman, and reaching the peak of life. He transmigrated. However, apart from feeling a little guilt for not having repaid the country that nurtured him, his teachers, and those kind-hearted people who helped him, the family in this world had already become inseparable to him over these 5 years. His kind yet strict grandfather, his sharp-tongued but soft-hearted grandmother, his meticulous yet unreserved aunt, his far-sighted and serious uncle, his taciturn but loving father, his principled and affectionate mother, his timid and gentle cousin, and his sister who was lazy but brave enough to shield him when other children tried to bully him. All of this felt like a dream, a fairy tale, dream woven day and night by Wang Ping, who had held 2 master's degrees in his previous life. Listening to the soft sobbing coming from the main room, Wang Ping's eyes filled with tears. How could he ever repay the love of his family in this life? Struggling to stand up, under the shocked gaze of his sister Wang Shui, Wang Ping had already put on his small cloth shoes. Compared to the straw sandals worn by his family, these small cloth shoes were especially precious. At this moment, Wang Ping seemed to feel no pain in his feet. Compared to the ache in his heart, this pain was utterly worthless. Little brother, Wang Shui was startled, jumped out of bed, slipped on her cloth shoes, and picked up Wang Ping. Wang Shui pinched Wang Ping's chubby little cheeks and threatened him in a grumpy tone. Little brat, if you dare to take one step, your feet will rot, believe it or not. Wang Ping was speechless. His height and age were a fatal flaw. He was always getting picked up. He squinted at Wang Shui. I don't believe it. Oh, you little brat. Wang Shui was amused by his look and was about to speak when she felt Wang Ping shaking violently in her arms. Sis, put me down. I want to go to the main house. What? Not afraid of the pain anymore. Not afraid. Looking at her little brother's serious expression, Wang Shui didn't know what to say. Her brother had always seemed very opinionated since birth. Grown-ups would say he was independent-minded. This was especially obvious in the past 2 years. While other kids in the village were mixing mud with urine, he would just stand off to the side, covering his nose and looking at them like they were idiots. Yes, it was the same look as when she was little and went to town to visit her aunt. The townspeople looked at fools with that exact expression. Because of that, the other village children took a dislike to the little fellow and clamored to teach him a lesson. Of course, she couldn't stand by and watch her little brother get bullied, so she picked up a wooden stick and stood in front of him. Just a bunch of little brats, still at the age where they can't even wipe their own noses, and they wanted to bully her little brother. She could already picture herself knocking them down one by one with her stick, just like the female chivalrous heroines in the town storybooks. But before she could make a move, her eldest brother came over and gave both those children and herself a thorough scolding. He said something like, "A young girl wielding a stick, what kind of behavior is that?" Only the little brother, who was the real culprit, sweetly called out cousin and was hugged by the eldest brother, who was all smiles. Looking at her little brother's expression, Wang Shui suddenly fell silent. She knew that no matter what she said, she couldn't change this brother's decision. She had no choice but to gently put down Wang Ping, and despite his firm refusals, she carefully slipped the cloth shoes onto his feet. Only then, with a worried expression, did she take Wang Ping's hand and walk toward the main house. It was only a few steps between the 2 rooms, but Wang Ping's face was taut, as if he were marching to his death. Wang Shui found it both irritating and amusing soon. The 2 of them arrived at the main house. At this moment, the main house was silent and still. The adults sat in strained silence, not uttering a word. Only Wang Xia, cautiously observing her surroundings, suddenly caught sight of her younger brother Wang Ping. In the ancient night, there were no LED lights normally at this hour. Everyone would have gone to bed early. But tonight, because of Wang Ping's matter, a dim oil lamp served as the only source of light. Due to long-term malnutrition, even with the oil lamp, Wang Xia could barely make out Wang Ping's figure. After checking repeatedly, Wang Xia suddenly froze and cried out loudly, because her frail younger brother had actually walked over on his own. "Grandpa, father, Xiao Pinger is walking." The stagnant silence suddenly broke. Everyone followed the sound and saw, under the gentle moonlight, by the threshold of the main house, a tiny, frail figure, guided by someone's hand, slowly knelt down before them. "Pinger, what are you doing?" Old Wang squinted, straining to see the doorway, only to find his beloved little grandson trembling as he knelt on the ground. He didn't know why Xiao Pinger had done this, but the ground was so cold, and the boy had just had his blisters popped. How painful that must be. Old Wang immediately wanted to go over and lift Wang Ping up. But before he could move, Zhang, who was closer to the door, had already rushed over. She tried to pick up Wang Ping with concern, but he struggled and broke free. Xiaoping, what are you doing? Pinger, get up, the ground is cold. Amid the cries and the worried gazes of the family, Wang Ping shook his little head and spoke unsteadily. Grandpa, this year's incident isn't Grandma's fault, it's Pinger's fault. Pinger is a boy. I should learn from father and uncle to stand tall and help the family. But Pinger is young and playful, spoiled by the elders, to the point that now, after just a few steps, I've developed blisters, causing Grandpa to worry, Grandma to blame herself, and all the elders to grieve for Pinger. This is Pinger's mistake. Please, Grandpa, don't blame Grandma anymore. As he said this, Wang Ping, in a proper manner, placed his small hands together on the ground and performed a long kowtow. Zhao's reddened eyes now grew complicated. This grandson was worth all the love she had given him. Old Wang, who had just stood up, was suddenly stunned and then collapsed onto the stool. Zhang, and he also instantly had red-rimmed eyes. Such a little one. How could he be so sensible? Both were mothers themselves, and faced with such an adorable, filial child. If not for the occasion, they would have wanted to scoop Wang Ping into their arms and cuddle him. Wang Youfa was all smiles, a touch of pride mixed with affection. This little Pinger, so young yet so understanding and filial, no wonder his mother had taken care of him all these years. He truly was Wang Youfa's own seed. Wang Yingxiong, on hearing Wang Ping's words, felt gratified but then suddenly thought of something, furrowing his brows unintentionally as he looked toward Old Wang. Old Wang, who had been lost in thought, now snapped back to reality. Meeting his eldest son's questioning gaze, he seemed to understand something but said nothing, only sighing deeply and shaking his head. Old Wang sighed, glanced at Zhao, who was smiling, and said with displeasure, "See, even little Pinger has pleaded for you. Aren't you going to help little Pinger up? Do you want an injured person to keep kneeling and catch a cold?" Zhao was delighted and, ignoring Old Wang's sarcasm, got up to carry Wang Ping over. This startled Zhang so much that she quickly bent down to lift Wang Ping, not daring to let her mother-in-law move herself. Only then did Wang Ping raise his head to look at Old Wang. Old Wang understood, gave a helpless smile, and said gently to Wang Ping, "All right, Grandpa understands. Little Pinger, get up quickly. Be careful not to catch a cold." Only then did Wang Ping smile, reaching out his arms toward Zhang, who also gently brushed the dust off Wang Ping's clothes. Then, holding Wang Ping with one hand and leading Wang Chui with the other, she walked inside. Once inside the house, Zhao called for Wang Ping to sit beside her, but Old Wang snatched him away first, earning a glare from Zhao. Old Man Wang put Wang Ping down, then called Wang Chui and Wang Xia over. The four of them, grandfather and grandchildren, all laughed heartily. Wang Xia and Wang Chui whispered to each other, occasionally making faces and winking at Wang Ping playfully. With few strict rules in the peasant household, he sure reheated the dinner that had long gone cold. It was just a few bowls of coarse noodles and several plates of wild vegetables. After dinner, the two daughters-in-law and the two girls began to clear the dishes and wipe down the table. Old Man Wang held Wang Ping, with Wang Youfa and Wang Yingxiong sitting beside him. In the courtyard, the soft moonlight was scattered into dappled patches by the branches and leaves of a small tree. Old Man Wang gently rocked Wang Ping back and forth. "Little Ping, does it still hurt? Grandpa, Ping, or doesn't T hurt anymore? Pinger is a man now. Little Ping, where did you learn those words today?" "Grandpa, what words?" "The words our little Pinger just said." "Oh, those?" Pinger heard them somewhere. Pinger remembers them after hearing them just once. "Right, Grandpa. Isn't Pinger amazing? Grandpa, Dad, and Uncle are all like that, aren't they?" "That's right. From now on, you should go out more. Grandpa doesn't expect you to achieve great things. As long as you're healthy and safe, I'll be satisfied. Only by moving around more can you have a healthy body." Old Wang gently scraped Wang Ping's nose with affection, then stared blankly at the trees swaying in the wind in the courtyard for a long time. Wang Yingxiong glanced at Wang Ping with pity and turned away. Wang Youfa remained cheerful as always. The autumn moonlight was like water. Soon, Wang Ping fell asleep. After Old Wang handed Wang Ping to Zhang, he slowly left while rubbing his lower back. Wang Yingxiong and Wang Youfa also dispersed. Nothing happened that night. Early the next morning, just as dawn was breaking, when Wang Ping opened his eyes, Wang Youfa was no longer beside him, and even Zhang was gone. Rubbing his eyes drowsily, Wang Ping sat up in bed and shouted outside. "Mom, where did you go?" There was no sound outside. Just as Wang Ping yawned and was about to get out of bed, the room suddenly darkened, and a familiar figure walked in. Wang Ping's face lit up with surprise, and he rushed forward to embrace him. "Cousin, you're finally back. Pinger missed you so much." Saying this, he rubbed his face against the newcomer's chest. Wang Xiang gently touched Wang Ping's forehead with his own, carefully set him down, and began helping him get dressed. "Cousin, Pinger can dress himself." "Huh, our little Pinger can dress himself now?" "Of course. Pinger is very smart." All right. So, has Pinger missed his cousin?" "Of course I have. Pinger misses you in the morning, misses you at night, misses you every single day." "You little liar. If only they were really true, how great it would be." "Cousin, why are you still helping me get dressed?" "No need." Soon, Wang Ping sat on the edge of the bed, dressed and bleary-eyed. Wang Xiang quickly tidied the bedding, sat down beside Wang Ping, and looked him over carefully. Wang Ping hugged Wang Xiang's arm and was about to fall asleep with his eyes closed. Wang Xiang chuckled, gently pinched Wang Ping's nose, and when Wang Ping frowned and opened his eyes, slowly pulled out a small cloth-wrapped bundle from his bosom. Wang Ping looked curiously as Wang Xiang carefully unfolded the cloth, revealing a few pieces of candy the size of his pinky finger. "Candy!" Wang Ping smiled in delight. Wang Xiang gently placed a piece of candy into Wang Ping's mouth. "How is it?" "Sweet." Seeing Wang Ping nod, Wang Xiang secretly swallowed his saliva and said to Wang Ping, "I'll give one piece to each of your two older sisters. If there's any left, I'll save them for you, okay? What about you, cousin?" "I've already had some. I help out at the grocery store, so I've eaten plenty of this stuff." "That's good." Wang Ping smiled adorably, and Wang Xiang also smiled as he gently stroked Wang Ping's hair. "Cousin, why are you back today? Don't you know? The wheat in the fields is almost ready to harvest, so I came back to help." "Is it already time to harvest the wheat?" Wang Ping stood there in a daze, thinking about his cousin Wang Xiang, who had already gone inside to change clothes. Although working as an assistant in a general store didn't sound prestigious, this opportunity had only come through the help of his aunt's husband. His cousin Wang Xiang was already 14 this year. Uncle figured that while he was still young and could handle the farm work himself, he wanted Xiang to go out and gain some experience, so he wouldn't be stuck in Wangjia village his whole life. If he could win the favor of the general store's boss, Uncle could finally rest easy. According to Aunt, the life of a store manager in the county town was quite good. He could occasionally buy a couple ounces of meat and some wine, living like a carefree immortal. That was far better than the life of poor farmers like them, who could barely smell meat once a year. Besides, even if Xiang didn't earn any special treatment, he could at least make some money working at the general store. Wang Xiang was already 14. In a few years he would be getting married, which would be another considerable expense, so they had to plan early. As a result, in the past 2 years, the times Wang Ping saw Wang Xiang could be counted on one hand. Every time Wang Xiang came back, he would bring Wang Ping some small snacks, which from Wang Ping's later life perspective were of very poor quality. Even the honey that Wang Xiang wrapped in cloth was blackish and had a strange taste, far inferior to the white sugar of later times. But this gesture of kindness already moved Wang Ping deeply. But for this introverted, shy, and sometimes timid older cousin, Wang Ping still felt a bit worried in his heart. How had Wang Xiang been faring in the grocery store these past 2 years? "Are you doing well?" Wang Ping thought. Suddenly, his head was gently tapped. He looked up and saw Wang Chui carrying a bucket of chicken feed, secretly watching him and smiling. Wang Ping got angry instantly and shouted in his childish voice, "Sis, you didn't wash your hands and touch my head." "Neener, neener, neener." Wang Chui stuck out her tongue, laughed, and ran away. After a night's rest, yesterday's blisters had improved a lot. Wang Ping was confident that as long as he didn't walk on ground as hot as yesterday's, for that short stretch of road, Wang Ping could now run 8-round trips. Watching Wang Chui's running figure, his small body seemed to take control. Wang Ping lowered his head and wanted to chase after her. Why can't I run?" Wang Ping stopped in surprise, looked up, and saw Wang Xiang holding his small head with his hand, helplessly glancing at Wang Chui's figure. Still this temperament, going off at the slightest provocation from your sister. Wang Ping pretended to be angry and pouted. What temperament? It's just that compared to the loneliness of his previous life, now Wang Ping prefers to play and enjoy family time with his sister and brother. Seeing Wang Ping's little mouth pout with a face full of grievance, Wang Xiang found it amusing and pinched his cheek. All right, don't be angry. Your cousin is going to the fields. Be careful not to fall. Wang Ping nodded, then suddenly looked up, eyes sparkling as he gazed at Wang Xiang. Cousin, I want to go too. You want to go too? Forget about the blisters you got yesterday. If you get another one today, Grandpa will beat my butt black and blue, you know? Wang Ping didn't speak, just kept looking at Wang Xiang. Wang Xiang was helpless. All right then, but you must let me carry you on my back. No, Ping wants to walk on his own. Have to carry you. Have to walk by myself. Then I won't take you. Then you carry me, but I'm very heavy. Hee hee, you underestimate your cousin. Get on my back. Let me see how heavy you are. All right, here I come. Watch me flying crow attack. What are you muttering? Ouch, this little Pinger. How did you get so heavy? It seems that Taoist was right. You kid really are destined to be rich and noble in the future. This large field of Wang village, beside the road, doesn't just belong to Wang Ping's family. Others in the village also have plots here. At this time, the sun had not fully risen yet. Hanging in the mid-heaven, the farmers had already arrived at their fields. After brief greetings, they started working because once the sun climbed higher, it would be too hot to get much done. Wang Xiang brought Wang Ping to the field. Old Wang was very happy to see his eldest grandson. Wang Youfa patted his nephew's head and smiled, saying, "You've grown again." But when everyone shifted their gaze to Wang Ping, who was hiding behind Wang Xiang, hugging his leg, and peeking out at them, they all wore wry smiles. Little Pinger, be good, don't cause trouble. Go home quickly. With your cousin here, the rest of us are enough. Yes, yes, yes. Go back quickly, or you'll get blisters on your feet again. Grandmother Zhao also waved her hand, telling Wang Ping to go home. Zhang Shi wiped the sweat from her forehead and stood up. She wanted to let Wang Ping go home, but seeing Wang Xiang beside her already rolling up his sleeves and ready to work, she swallowed her words. Both were her sons. Though she felt sorry for him, Wang Ping had to grow up and gradually get used to farm work. With that in mind, Zhang Shi hardened her heart, turned around, and continued harvesting the wheat. He sure was overjoyed at the arrival of her son. Seeing little Wang Ping, such a tiny tot, wanting to work with him was both funny and exasperating. She pointed to a pile of cut wheat nearby and raised her eyebrows teasingly. Little Pinger, you're just a tiny thing. Can you even tie it up? At this moment, the villagers from the nearby fields who had been overtaken by Old Man Wang's family also caught up. They stood nearby, panting heavily. Watching Old Man Wang's family talking with little Wang Ping, they too became intrigued. Little grown-up, can you tie it up? If you can tie it, your Uncle Zhao will try to persuade your family. How about that? Upon hearing Zhao Tieju's words, the resting villagers nearby also started cheering with laughter. Little grown-up, show us what you can do. Little adult, just bundling wheat? You first do this, then that, and it's done. Give Zhao Taiju a good hard slap on the face. Wang Lu, you little bastard, just wait. The nickname Little Adult was given to Wang Ping by the villagers. Half the reason came from the Taoist shocking speech at the village entrance information center, and the other half was because Wang Ping had been different from other kids since he was little. When he just learned to walk, his eyes already carried a pride that towered above everyone else. This kind of gaze they had only seen on high-ranking officials, so they called Wang Ping Little Adult. But later, as Wang Ping grew up, they found that this kid seemed quite polite, his words and actions proper. It seemed his demeanor was completely different from those annoying brats who only knew how to run wild from the east end of the village to the west, catching toads and squeezing out their urine. Thus, the nickname Little Adult for Wang Ping was further confirmed. Wang Ping stepped out from behind Wang Xiang, generously cupped his hands in greeting to everyone, and then spoke in a drawling manner. I dared to let all uncles, aunties, and elders know that I, Wang Ping. Little Pinger, what are you saying? I am your second great uncle. Let me tell you all, uncles, aunties, elder brothers, and sisters, it's just a bundle of wheat straw for me, Wang Ping. It's as easy as turning my hand over. With that, he fixed his gaze on a pile of wheat straw that he pointed to. That pile is the smallest, I'll bundle that one. Then he skillfully bundled it up, picked up the wheat, and stumbled away under the astonished gazes of the crowd. When did little Pinger learn this? Second son, did you teach him? Old Wang pointed at Wang Ping's receding back, somewhat surprised. This grandson had grown up under his watch that he could pull off this trick really threw the old man for a loop. I don't know. Pinger gets blisters just from walking. How could I have taught him this? Wang Youfa shook his head, clearly taken aback that Wang Ping could bundle wheat. Wang Youfa shook his head, clearly taken aback that Wang Ping could bundle wheat. Only Zhao glanced around at the villagers with a proud smirk. You two, just look at who he is. Our little Pinger has been extremely clever since he was a child. It's just bundling wheat. My grandson can learn it just by glancing at it once. He also nodded in agreement. This little Pinger has always been very opinionated. I underestimated him. It seems that in the future, he will definitely become a good farmer. Hearing his grandmother and mother praise his little brother, Wang Xiang shook his head and looked at them with some excitement. Hee, Pinger is much smarter than those scholars of the same age in town. Mother, have you forgotten what the Taoist said about little brother? He sure laughed. Scholars are reincarnations of the literary star from heaven. Although Pinger was clever, he sure still didn't believe he could compare to a scholar. But the old Taoist words made her hesitate. Go on, go on. How dare you tease your mother? Don't you see that your father is nowhere to be found? Hurry up and go help. Wang Xiang scratched his head, chuckled, and ran off. The surrounding farmers looked at Wang Ping's receding figure and couldn't help clicking their tongues in admiration. If someone said that Wang Ping had known how to bundle wheat before, they wouldn't believe it. Just yesterday, when Wang Ping was carried home on his grandmother's back, the villagers probably knew about the commotion in old Wang's family. So this kid really learned it just by one look? Alas, comparing people only brings misery. At this moment, hearing the Wang family's words, Zhao Taizhu turned his head to take a look, with envy clear in his eyes. Uncle Wang, what did the little gentleman just say? It's as easy as turning over his palm. Oh no, it's as easy as turning one's hand over. This little gentleman talks in such a bookish way. You should send him to school. Didn't your Wang Xiang say that if Wang Ping really earns you a title of honor, your Wang family will be incredibly lucky? As he spoke, he didn't care about the others with a straw stalk in his mouth. He lowered his head and got busy. The remaining farmers had varied expressions. Seeing that the Wang family didn't say anything, they turned around and went back to their own work. Zhang Shi was on the ground, cutting wheat in handfuls. When she heard the others praising her son, a smile couldn't help but appear on her face. But at the mention of school, her smile froze and her eyes lit up. She just turned to look at old man Wang, and seeing that he didn't say anything, she turned back to continue working, secretly calculating in her mind. Father, Wang Youfa was also excited at the word school. His son Wang Ping was so smart it would be wonderful if he could go to school. So he turned to look at old man Wang. Old man Wang seemed to deliberately avoid Wang Youfa's gaze. He swung his sickle forward and walked slowly toward the wheat. All right, let's cut the wheat. Otherwise, once the sun rises, it'll be unbearable. Wang Youfa was stunned for a moment, then slowly followed, but now there was something inexplicable in his eyes. Then he and Zhao followed suit. On the official road, a carriage sped by. Inside the carriage, a middle-aged scholar in a blue robe gently lifted the bamboo curtain, glanced at the swiftly passing scenery outside the window, and nodded with satisfaction. He was the county magistrate of Jiyuan County. This year, with ample rainfall and sufficient sunlight, the crops in the fields were growing exceptionally well. As the county's parent official, the autumn harvest was of utmost importance to him, as it directly impacted the tax collection in a few days and his chances of promotion. Cheng Hu, the harvest looks pretty good this year, doesn't it? Cheng Hu, who was driving the carriage, grinned upon hearing this. Isn't that all thanks to your excellent governance, magistrate? Without you, how could Jiyuan County enjoy such favorable weather and bountiful harvests? Wei Zhongdao, inside the carriage, was taken aback for a moment, then also burst into laughter. Really? Really? Truer than real gold. Wei Zhongdao nodded with satisfaction. Captain Cheng had a way with words. As the county magistrate, he had devoted himself entirely to the development of Jiyuan County, even cutting back on his favorite noodle soup over the past few days. Where should we head next? It should be Wangjiazwang. Wangjiazwang. Wei Zhongdao murmured softly and let down the bamboo curtain of the carriage. Though the lush green mountains outside were pleasant to behold, the dust kicked up by the horses' hooves and the scorching heat made his decision a wise one. As for why he had come, a few days ago, As the county magistrate, he had dispatched everyone except the sheriff and a few constables in charge of security to various regions for the autumn harvest inspection. Even a white-haired chief clerk had been sent to a nearby town on patrol. As for the man driving the carriage beside him, he was the county's chief constable. After all, his safety was of paramount importance. Just as Wei Zhongdao was sweating profusely and feeling the heat unbearable, Cheng Hu's voice suddenly rang out. "Sir, ahead lies Wang Jiazwang. Shall we walk from here?" Wei Zhongdao nodded. Just as usual, he, a dignified county magistrate, had to go incognito in the scorching heat to inspect the autumn harvest. He hoped he wouldn't run into any criminals or those sabotaging the harvest. Otherwise, he would return to the county office and have Constable Cheng bring his men to teach them a lesson. Wei Zhongdao wiped the sweat from his neck and forehead with his sleeve, nodded at Cheng Hu, and walked toward the wheat fields of Shaowang village. Under the shade of a tree by the wheat field, a child stood alone, seemingly performing some strange ritual. On the other side, Wang Ping looked at his tender little hands, scratched by the wheat stubble. They were full of a sense of brokenness. The scorching autumn sun hung high in the sky, sweat trickled down his back, soaking his clothes. Wang Ping's face was flushed red, and a wave of sorrow and despair surged into his heart. He recalled a short video from his previous life, where a hunched-over, angry, ferocious child had become a true portrayal of his current self. Suddenly, a cool breeze with a hint of chill blew, and Wang Ping felt as if every pore on his body had opened up. He vaguely remembered reading a farming advisory text passed down from ancient times in his past life, one that was full of classical allusions and ornate rhetoric. At the time, he paid it no mind, but now he just wanted to curse out loud. What a load of crap! How dare they lecture the common folk on how to live? It was precisely those high officials, sitting loftily in their mansions, who turned a blind eye to the suffering poor, all while using the people's name to seek eternal fame. Wang Ping shook his head dazedly, looking at the distant fields, the men drenched in sweat, the elderly, the women carrying bamboo baskets, and the children. Suddenly, a poem he had learned in his past life surfaced completely in his mind. Glancing at the crowd moving away, Wang Ping softly recited it. Gazing at the wheat harvest. In fields, few idle months are known in the fifth moon. Each man's workload is grown. When southern winds stir the night, wheat covers the ridges, golden bright. Women and girls bring food in baskets. Children carry broth in flasks. They follow to the fields to feed the hands, while sturdy men toil on the southern lands. Their feet are steamed by the summer ground, their backs scorched under the sun's fierce round. Exhausted, they feel not the heat's sting, but cherish the long summer day's offering. A poor woman with a child beside her, holding gleaned ears in her right hand and a worn basket hanging from her left arm. Having said this, Wang Ping suddenly stopped, clicking his tongue. The rest was not easy to say should he say it or not. Not saying it would be a bit uncomfortable. Just as Wang Ping was hesitating, a faint voice suddenly reached his ears. "Little scholar, why have you stopped reciting? Continue." Wang Ping turned abruptly and saw a middle-aged man with a goatee bending down with a chuckle, his face close to Wang Ping's. "A ghost!" Wang Ping shouted and ran away. Why did this child run away? Is this venerable one so frightening? Watching Wang Ping flee in panic after his ghostly cry, Wei Zhongdao pointed at his own face and looked at Cheng Hu in astonishment. "I am the magistrate of this county. When he sees me, he should at least bow respectfully, if not prostrate himself. But this kid, on the contrary, sees me as if he's seen a ghost. Your Excellency, you are dignified, learned, intelligent, graceful, and have a beautiful face." At first, Wei Zhongdao rather enjoyed Cheng Hu's flattery, squinting and nodding. "That's right, I, the county magistrate, am exactly that kind of person." But then the more he listened, the more something fell off, and he kicked Cheng Hu right on the backside. Cheng Hu stayed hunched over, completely still, but Wei Zhongdao was thrown back 2 steps by the force. "Sir, what is the meaning of this?" Cheng Hu's face was full of grievance. He hadn't done anything wrong, and on top of being kicked, if he had made the county magistrate fall, it would be a serious offense. "Get out, get out, get out. Shuts the moon and shames the flowers. Is that a phrase suitable for describing me?" Wei Zhongdao, somewhat embarrassed, shook off Cheng Hu's supporting hand with a flick of his sleeve and regained the bearing of a county magistrate. This humble one can't read, so I just heard it from someone else. But that young child just now was interesting. This poem is integrated into a whole, as if made by heaven. However, it seems the poem isn't finished, it feels incomplete, which is a bit regrettable. Wei Zhongdao smacked his lips, savoring the poem carefully, then disappointedly shook his head. And what are you ing for? As if you can understand it. I don't understand. Cheng Hu shook his head decisively, then smiled and gestured with his lips towards where Wang Ping had run off, speaking tentatively. How about I go find that kid and let the county magistrate have a proper questioning? Wei Zhongdao kicked him again, but this time with less force. Cheng Hu still didn't move, and Wei Zhongdao only trembled slightly before steadying himself, a hint of smugness in his heart. What do you take me for? Some kind of extortionist? Your humble servant, Your Honor. I was just thinking you might want to hear the whole story. If that kid runs far away, you might never get to listen to him again. No need. This lad, young as he is, dressed in rough linen, and able to memorize such a long poem, seems to be a farmer's son with some talent. If fate allows, we'll meet again one day. Your Honor, could it be that he composed it himself? The things he recited kind of match what's right in front of us. Defies, impossible. Absolutely impossible. I couldn't compose such a thing back in the day, so how could he? Wei Zhongdao turned up his nose, utterly dismissing Cheng Hu's half-asleep speculation. Oh, but Your Honor, why are you heading to the carriage? Let's go. We'll tour another village. As for Zai Wang's Wang, not going to watch anymore. Such a lively scene. They are all good subjects of my great Xian. Soon, the carriage sped by again, accompanied by a series of sharp laughs echoing from afar, scaring Wang Ping, who had already hidden under a distant tree, into crouching down with his head in his hands. Amiba, Guanyin Bodhisattva of the southern seas, heaven responding thunder commander of the 9 heavens, as per the decree, haste, haste. Don't catch me, don't catch me. After a long while, with only the rustling of leaves in the wind mixed with the chirping of crickets and birds, Wang Ping turned around, leaned against the tree trunk, and gasped heavily. That was really close. I have no idea who that goatee-bearded guy is, but judging by the burly man beside him who seems to follow the goatee's lead, Wang Ping concluded they were definitely no ordinary people. Ordinary farmers don't eat well enough to develop such robust muscles. Lucky for him, he didn't recite the rest of that poem about harvesting wheat otherwise, if he ran into someone petty-minded or if this great Xian dynasty also had literary inquisition, he, Wang Ping, might have transmigrated again long ago. After the tension, Wang Ping slowly raised his palm, looking at the deep marks left on his slender, small hand from tying the wheat. He leaned weakly against the tree trunk, his disheveled hair stuck together with sweat. Exhaustion seeped through every pore of Wang Ping's body. As his eyes grew hazy, he recalled his previous life, that imperfect existence he now found himself unexpectedly nostalgic for. Though old man Wang had described the great Xian dynasty as a time of prosperity, for Wang Ping, just helping with a few small tasks today had left him utterly drained. He dared not imagine if one day the burden of the Wang family fell on his shoulders. Could he truly bear it? Knowledge churned in his mind. Wang Ping deeply realized one thing. Since his shoulders couldn't carry loads and his hands couldn't lift burdens, he would pick up a brush and, with ink and words, craft a brilliant future for himself and his family. After all, he was a master of both the liberal arts and sciences, a pillar of talent from his previous life. Though the times were different and the path of study might be fraught with difficulties, reading was what he excelled at most. Wang Ping forced himself to stand, then walked slowly toward the fields. At this moment, his steps no longer faltered, slow but resolute. In the fields, bundles of wheat were neatly stacked together. Under the shade of a tree, the 3 members of the Zhang family were resting. Seeing Wang Ping approaching, Zhang smoothed his hair and looked at him curiously. Sensing that his mood seemed different, she whispered in his ear, "Where did you go just now? Why are you unhappy?" Wang Ping shook his head and wrapped his arms around Zhang's neck. "Mother, I want to study." "Study?" Zhang's body stiffened suddenly. She stole a glance at he and Zhao, who were talking and laughing, and seeing that they hadn't noticed, she nodded gently. "I'll talk to your father about it." "All right, go and play." Wang Ping nodded. Seeing Grandma Zhao smiling with open arms, he stepped back 2 steps, then, imitating a little calf, gently rushed into her embrace. The others were amused and laughed heartily. After a few more days, the wheat from all the fields was harvested. Grandma Zhao, as a rare treat, cut some fatty meat to reward the hard-working family, drawing a perfect conclusion to the year's labors. After reaping the wheat, threshing and drying it were all manual labor, but drying was done in the courtyard at home, where Wang Ping, his sister, and his cousin could also help. The elder cousin was also kept behind by old Wang, because the tax payment was due in a few days. Having worked at a grocery store, in old Wang's eyes, he could help calculate how much grain the family needed to hand over. During these days, Wang Ping heard no news from Zhang about his schooling. Looking at the few remaining candies in the bag, Wang Ping suddenly came up with an idea. Wang Yao, the grandson of the village head Lijing. According to village gossip, this kid had already been sent to the school. Wang Ping figured that if he offered a candy in exchange for borrowing a book, the kid wouldn't refuse. So, every day at sunset, two small figures, one thin and one chubby, appeared in a grove near Wang family village. The chubby kid kept slurping something in his mouth, his face full of bliss. Wang Ping studied the book, drawing and writing on the ground with a stick. Time flew by, and the day for paying taxes was fast approaching. Bang, bang, bang. The loud sound of a gong rang through Wang family village. Wang Changgue, the village head with graying hair and a wrinkled face, was shouting at the top of his lungs through the village. The annual grain collection is here. Every household should prepare the grain they need to hand over. You all know how much land you have, whether you've divided the family, and how much each should pay. If any of you can't calculate, come to me. My grandson, he went to school this year, can help you with the math. The teacher at the school says my grandson is very good at arithmetic. Wang Changgue grinned widely, his face full of pride. In this era of scraping a living from the soil, being able to support one's descendants in school was something to be envied. As Wang Changgue walked along, the villagers who heard the news looked curious and envious. Their constant questioning made Wang Changgue even more smug. Uncle Changgue, did your Wang Yao really go to school? Of course it's true. He's been there for a few months now. Is schooling expensive? I'm thinking of sending my boy there too. A stack of the cheapest hemp paper costs 41, and you need a full set of brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. Plus, you have to pay the teacher's apprenticeship fee. A few taels of silver are necessary. Ah, so many? Then let's forget it. Uncle Changgue. So, according to you, that kid Wang Yao is definitely going to be a high official in the future. That kid Wang Yao is actually quite clever. Bring honor to his ancestors, the old man didn't name him wrong. Bring honor to ancestors now that his grandson is in school. Uncle Changgue has become all scholarly. Haha, nonsense. I'm off now. You all prepare the grain to hand in. Taxes can't be short. If you run out of grain, come borrow from your uncle. Okay, don't worry, uncle. Wang Changgue waved his hand and left with a laugh. Soon, his voice spread through every alley of Wang Jiazwang. At this moment, old Wang and his sons were carrying out bags of grain. Wang Youfa and Wang Yingxiong silently hauled the sacks into the yard, their shoulders already calloused. Old Wang was in the yard, giving instructions about the grain delivery to his two sons. Wang Ping listened curiously, but suddenly heard a series of urgent shouts that seemed to be calling his name. Wang Ping followed the sound and saw the chubby boy Wang Yao lying at the doorway, waving frantically at him. Wang Ping was puzzled as to why this kid had suddenly come looking for him. He hesitated and glanced at old Wang. Old Wang also noticed Wang Yao at the door and, seeing the questioning look in his grandson's eyes, felt a warmth in his heart and nodded. Go on, there's nothing much to do here. Your father, your uncle, and I are enough. That kid from the Changgue family seems to be in a hurry. Wang Ping nodded, said something to Wang Youfa and Wang Yingxiong, and then ran out. Dad, uncle, I'm off. The two nodded, seeing Wang Ping being pulled away by Wang Yao. Old Wang finally let out a sigh. Pinger has been spending time with Wang Yao these past few days, hasn't he? It seems so. The two of them go to the woods at the east end of the village at the same time every day. No one knows what they're up to. They're studying, Wang Yingxiong said calmly. This matter was something Wang Xia had mentioned to him. That day, after Wang Xiang returned home, Wang Xia had excitedly shown off the candy to He Shi, but then she saw He Shi's confused expression. Wang Xia found it strange because every time Wang Xiang brought candy back from outside, apart from the two older sisters, The remaining candy would be distributed by Wang Ping to the family according to size. Even if he was greedy, he never kept any for himself. This was also one of the reasons the family doted on Wang Ping. But after this inquiry, apart from his two older sisters, even his grandmother, Zhao, didn't give him even a bit of sugar. This was completely inconsistent with Wang Ping's usual behavior. Besides, Wang Ping had been hanging out with the chubby Wang Yao these past few days, so Zhao and he thought Wang Ping had been bullied. They had Wang Chui secretly follow him and saw that Wang Ping was exchanging sugar for books to read. After returning home, she told he, who then told Wang Yingxiong, and only then did they learn what had happened today. After hearing Wang Yingxiong's words, Wang Youfa's eyes flickered, and he spoke tentatively. Father, about Pinger's schooling. It wasn't that Wang Youfa had never brought it up, but being born into a farming family, schooling was a major affair. The whole family's hard work for a year might not even cover a student's short-term expenses. Wang Xiang, as the eldest grandson, wasn't sent to school back then. If they sent Wang Ping now, what would the eldest son's family think? Old Wang was the head of the family. On one hand, the family was poor. On the other, he doted on his youngest grandson. He wanted to treat everyone fairly. But his youngest grandson was so clever and sensible, leaving him in a dilemma. Pinger has suffered since coming to our Wang family. After a long while, he sighed and changed the subject. You guys stack the wheat first, so it'll be ready when the officials come. After speaking, he pounded his back and walked away without another word. Dad, my wife and I talked it over. I'm going to find some manual labor work in town soon. Could you lend me some money first? Pinger is 5 now, can't afford to delay his education. Old man Wang remained silent, but his figure seemed to age a few more years as he stepped over the threshold. Second son, give me a hand. Let's carry this over first. Brother, don't worry about Ping. Dad will figure something out. With a grunt, Wang Yingxiong lifted another sack of grain and trudged off. Wang Youfa helplessly slapped his thigh and followed. At the doorway, little fatty Wang Yao glanced around to make sure no one was watching, then pulled Wang Ping into a corner and furtively pulled out a crudely drawn hemp paper. What's this? Wang Ping looked at him in confusion, not understanding. Never mind that. Hurry, 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 help me calculate how much grain each of these families needs to hand over. Grain submission. Wang Ping took a closer look and indeed saw some fields and population records on the rough paper. Luckily, he had read Wang Yao's books these past few days. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to decipher those scribbles. Strange to say, the characters in this world were somewhat similar to ancient texts from his previous life. After a brief familiarization, he could manage to read them. Why should I help? Wang Ping remained unmoved and turned to leave. The chubby boy was so anxious he nearly jumped, pointing his chubby finger at Wang Ping. It's all your fault. If you hadn't written my math homework so well, would the teacher have praised me in front of my grandfather? If he hadn't praised me, would I be stuck with this crappy job now? The chubby boy wore a bitter expression. Wang Ping immediately found it amusing because he had traded candy for books and inadvertently displayed some mathematical talent. Seeing that Wang Ping was good at arithmetic, the chubby boy had dumped all his homework on him, claiming it was an essential requirement. He never burnt incense, but when trouble came, he expected me to take the fall. Wang Ping certainly wouldn't be pushed around by this little brat. He raised an eyebrow and said to the chubby boy, It's not impossible to help you. I have one condition. Tell me, tell me. The chubby boy looked at Wang Ping eagerly, his eyes full of pleading. Give me a few more books to read. The little fat boy breathed a sigh of relief. He thought it was something big, but it was just this. However, his eyes rolled, and he looked back at Wang Ping. Then there must be rules. You can't take them home, you can only read them in that grove, and it has to be just the two of us. Wang Ping was speechless. What did he mean by reading in the grove? And it had to be just the two of them. But the urgent matter was to help the little fat boy with his arithmetic problem. With just a glance at the tax records of each household, Wang Ping calculated the amounts. But when he told the little fat boy, the kid pulled a long face. I can't remember it all. Wang Ping was helpless. As time grew shorter and the little fat boy grew more anxious, Wang Ping looked at the names on the rough paper, lost in thought. Suddenly, his eyes lit up, and he whispered something in the little fat boy's ear. Oh, okay, I've got it. The little fat boy muttered to himself, repeating the few sentences Wang Ping had taught him, afraid of accidentally forgetting them. But in his heart, he was already scheming. Wang Ping was so amazing from now on, He must lend him more books and get him help with homework. Then, with the reward money from Grandpa, he could buy more candies. If Wang Ping disagrees, I can just reluctantly give him one share at that time. Thinking of this, the chubby Wang Yao grinned foolishly at Wang Ping, then said goodbye and ran home. At this moment, at the village head's house at the entrance of the village, several Yamen runners driving donkey carts arrived swaying. In the Dashuan dynasty, after the autumn harvest in various places, the village head would report to the county office. The county office would then send personnel to each village to collect taxes on site. For some particularly remote villages, they would designate a location or have the villagers deliver the grain to the authorities themselves. The authorities would give appropriate compensation. This was the busiest time for the authorities, and often there were not enough hands. Therefore, the village heads became the bridge between the authorities and the villagers. Is Wang Changgui here? The leading official pulled the reins, stopped the donkey cart to the side, greeted the remaining few, and walked into Wang Yogui's house. Master officials? Wang Yugui greeted with a smile and a cupped fist salute, glancing at the donkey cart outside the yard. Should I invite the masters to come in and rest for a while and have some cold water? The official waved his hand, then on his own initiative glanced at the bags of grain piled in the courtyard. He walked over, picked one up, rubbed it in his hands, then put it down and dusted off his hands. No time to rest. While the weather is still cool, let's get this work done quickly. Otherwise, it won't be good once it gets hot. The land register of Wang family village is with you, right? Here, here. Wang Yugui nodded and pointed in a direction for the official. Then he strode over, and soon there was a creak as a wooden door was pushed open. In Wang family village, Wang Changgui's family could be considered relatively well off. It was said that his ancestors had produced scholars, and although the family had later declined, they still had some savings left. Wang Changgui had also learned a few characters from his elders when he was young. Though not many, this was one of the reasons he could become the village chief. At that moment, pushing the door open, he saw the land register of Wang family village lying quietly on a wooden table, surrounded by a stack of hemp paper and a writing brush stained with ink. Your Excellency, here it is. Wang Changgui handed over the register. The official took it casually, looked at the items on the table, and gazed at Wang Changgui with curiosity. Do you have a scholar in your family? Wang Changgui's slightly hunched back straightened, and a smile could not be concealed on his face. Let the officer know, this old man's grandson has been attending school for over 2 months. The teacher who teaches arithmetic at the school all praise him for his intelligence. The official's hand holding the ledger paused slightly, and he squeezed out a smile as he handed the ledger to Wang Changgui. Uncle Changgui, just call me Godan. You are about the same age as my father. If you keep calling me sir, I will lose years off my life. You keep this ledger. I can't read either, so we can just compare later. Seeing the official's attitude become more gentle, Wang Changgui, shrewd as an old fox, understood his intention. After a moment's thought, he accepted it with both hands. You're too kind, sir. Then let's start now. Wang Changgui raised his eyebrows and looked at Jean Godan tentatively. Please. Jean Godan nodded and stepped out. He walked directly outside the courtyard, exchanged a few words with a clerk dressed in a blue uniform and wearing a square cap, and the clerk nodded faintly, taking a ledger from his sleeve. This was a sample of the county office's record of Wang family village's fields, intended for the verification and collection of land taxes. Let's go. The clerk led Jean Gooden inside. Old Wang saw the clerk and was about to clasp his hands in greeting, but the clerk waved his hand. Old sir, let's begin. Wang Changgui was taken aback, then nodded. He was about to call for his grandson when he saw his son Wang Shi walk in from the yard and shake his head at him. Wang Changgui was furious. That little brat had run off again. When he got back, he'd give him a taste of Grandpa's loving discipline, running off to play at such an important time. Really? Just then, little fatty Wang Yao came running in on his short legs, his small face tense, weaving through the adults moving grain and the children playing, panting heavily as he arrived home. Wang Yao, a little chubby boy, came running from afar, startling the few donkeys at the gate into braying. Hee-haw, hee-haw. The 4 people in the yard thought something had happened. They turned to see Wang Yao with his hands on his knees, panting heavily. The elderly clerk looked at Wang Changgui and his son with amazement, then at Wang Yao, and couldn't help but praise sincerely. Elder, this grandson of yours is truly extraordinary. Wang Changgui's face turned green with anger. Wang Shi pulled Wang Yao inside. Wang Yao gasped for air, not daring to meet his grandfather's eyes. After greeting the men, they began to check the taxes. Each household reported their own taxes, which were then checked by the clerk. If they couldn't calculate, the clerk would do it for them before loading the grain. In the past, the clerk did all the calculations himself. Today, having this little lad from Little Wang village saved a lot of work. Soon, the land tax for each household came out precisely from the chubby boy's mouth. For Wang Xiaohu's family, the one who pees far it should be this amount. Should be 3 Dan and 8 Sheng. The elderly clerk glanced at Wang Yao in surprise and nodded. Correct. Check it, and it can be loaded onto the cart. The nearby farmers responded and carried the grain to the donkey cart. Before leaving, they couldn't help but glance at Wang Yao. That kid from the main family was so sharp at such a young age, maybe Little Wang village would produce a scholar someday. Wang Changgui and Wang Shi were delighted the teacher was right. Their grandson's son was indeed clever and promising. The constable Zhang Guden couldn't help feeling smug. His earlier smile at Wang Changgui had been a wise move. The older clerk nodded approvingly at the silent Wang Yao, thinking such composure bodes well for his future. But Wang Yao, feeling the eyes on him, was panicking inside, not daring to lift his head. After loading the grain at Wang Xiaohu's house, they moved to the next farmer, and the previous family watched young Wang Yao verifying taxes with the officials. They followed to watch the fun, a common human trait, and after a few houses, the crowd grew, including village women, elderly men, and even children his age, chasing and playing by the donkey cart. The clerk didn't stop them, grinning at the commotion. At another doorstep, the chubby Wang Yao, still a child and having deceived his grandfather and father, felt the pressure. Despite the clerk's warm smile, sweat beaded on his forehead. He stammered in a low voice. Wang Changjin likes to flush ants with his urine. And he spoke loudly. It should be 3 Shi and 2 Do. Wang Changgui was baffled by what he heard, and the middle-aged clerk also looked confused. Brat, what are you talking about? Wang Changgui lightly slapped the chubby boy on the neck and frowned at him. The surrounding noise was so chaotic that only Wang Changgui and the older clerk near the chubby boy could faintly hear his muttering. And nothing at all. The chubby boy Wang Yao turned his head to look at Wang Changgui, his eyes evasive. Wang Changgui's heart suddenly tightened. His intuition told him that his grandson wasn't telling the truth, but seeing the crowd gathered around to watch the excitement, Wang Changgui forced a smile at everyone and didn't press further. Sir, what my grandson just said, is it correct? Wang Changgui turned to the dubious-looking clerk and asked. The clerk hesitated for a moment before snapping back to reality and nodding. Oh, yes. What this child said is correct. That's good. Wang Changgui finally put his mind at ease. The clerk waved to the few people behind him, signaling that this family's grain tax for the year had been carried up. Then let's go to the next house. Okay. The two turned around, and the little fatty, gritting his teeth, followed closely behind. Behind them, the farmers of Little Wang village looked at Wang Yao's small figure, their eyes full of envy. The village head's little grandson is really something. It looks like the village head's family will produce a high official. That's right. Look at those officials, they were shocked. They've seen it all, which shows that kid Wang Yao. TSK. I've thought highly of the village head's grandson since he was little. I have a distant relative with a daughter of 14 who is sturdy and good for childbearing. I think she'd be a good match for this boy. A grandson is smart. As the village heads, can your relative really hope to marry into that? My relative is different. And so, the crowd followed behind, buzzing with discussion, while up ahead Wang Changgui led the clerk from house to collect grain. Another household was done. The owner of this house came out of the yard cheerfully with Wang Changgui, and upon seeing familiar villagers outside, they greeted each other. Old Six, how's it going? We're all just common folks, nothing fancy. Is the grain enough for this year? Haha, yeah, it's enough. We even have some left, saving it up for the little brat's future wedding. Good. My family's not bad off either. What you all up to? Why so many people this year? Oh, this? The man called Old Six was pulled aside and whispered to. After hearing it, his eyes lit up. Soon, one more person joined the entourage. Wang Yao, on the other hand, was extremely anxious. He hadn't expected his grandfather Wang Changgui to have him calculate the grain for so many households, with so many people following behind. He was still just a child. As the results stored in his mind dwindled, Wang Yao grew more and more anxious. After passing 2 more households, Wang Yao's mental tally was completely gone. And just then, they arrive at Wang Ping's doorstep. At Wang Ping's house, a commingled noise of commotion and donkey brays came from outside the yard. Old Wang frowned, leaned his body slightly, and a sharp glint flashed in his eyes. Wang Ping curiously watched Old Man Wang's reaction, but as if sensing Wang Ping's gaze, just for a moment, Old Man Wang returned to his usual gentle and kind appearance. "What, Xiao Ping are scared?" Wang Ping shook his head, but before he could speak, he saw his cousin Wang Xiang running in from outside the courtyard. "Grandpa, Dad, Uncle, the government officers from the county office are here, and a big crowd of people from the village is following them." "A big crowd of people from the village?" Wang Youfa and Wang Yingxiong exchanged glances and walked out, just as Wang Changwei led a few people into the yard. "Officer, right this way, right this way." "Uncle Changwei?" Wang Changwei nodded, greeted Old Man Wang, and then started shouting to Wang Yao behind him. "Yaoer, come over quickly and do the calculations." Wang Yao hid behind the group, moving with tiny steps, as people kept urging him to come forward. Wang Changwei frowned, but the clerk was calmly smiling, though his look carried a hint of meaning. Wang Yao screamed inwardly, "I didn't ask about all this land tax, and besides, it's Wang Ping's family, so let Wang Ping do the math." He really didn't know. He thought about it, but Wang Xiang didn't dare to say it out loud. He dawdled and refused to go over, all the while glancing at Wang Ping. Wang Ping probably guessed what Wang Xiang was thinking. "Oh well, I'll exploit this little fatty later." So he stepped forward and greeted Wang Changwei and the few officials. "Grandpa Changwei, and you esteemed officials." Wang Changwei looked at the extremely polite Wang Ping and couldn't help but nod. It's rare to see such a well-mannered kid from a farming family. No wonder the villagers call him Little Adult. The clerk's eyes lit up, and he nodded slightly. "This is Ping, isn't it? What's the matter?" It wasn't just Wang, Chunka, even old Wang, and the others looked at Wang Ping curiously. If Wang Ping hadn't always had his own opinions and known when to stop, old Wang would never have allowed him to speak in front of the officials like that. "It's nothing much. It's just that Wang Xiang is the same age as me. If I could calculate the land taxes for so many families like Wang Xiang does, I'd be so overjoyed I'd blow bubbles out of my nose. Although I'm not as clever as Wang Xiang, he and I are good friends. Isn't he too tired like this? Why not let him take a rest? Let him rest." Everyone was stunned for a moment. This kid Wang Ping had a point. No matter how smart Wang Yao was, he was only 5 years old. Seeing Wang Yao all sweaty like this, he might really be tired. Wang Yao's eyes lit up at that moment, looking at Wang Ping with gratitude. "Good old Wang Ping. From now on, if I have a candy, you'll get half of it, and I'll lend you a book for a few more hours. As for homework, we'll talk later." By then, the villagers were also urging Wang Changwei to let Wang Yao rest. They said he mustn't tire out this budding scholar, or else the headman's family would lose a future scholar official. Hearing everyone's words, Wang Yao put on an award-winning act, pretending to be drowsy. Old Man Wang and Wang Yingxiong didn't say a word, each silently guessing what Wang Ping was really up to. Wang Changwei squinted, neither agreeing nor disagreeing with the villagers, but his eyes were locked on Wang Yao. He had felt something was off since earlier. As Wang Yao's grandfather, he knew the kid so well that he could tell whether he was going to take a solid or a runny shit just by seeing him turn around. Just then, Wang sure seemed to recall something and whispered a few words in Wang Changwei's ear. This only deepened Wang Changwei's suspicion. He glanced from Wang Ping to Wang Yao, forcing a smile from his withered face as he looked at Wang Ping. "Wang Ping, don't worry. If this old man remembers correctly, Wang Yao is a few months older than you. Let him calculate your family's grain tax first, then he can rest. Wang Yao is a man, a simple arithmetic problem won't be difficult for him." Wang Yao's eyes barely opened a slit, looking at Wang Ping with a pleading expression. Wang Ping felt helpless just as he was about to speak. Wang Changwei cut him off. Wang Changwei waved his hand for Wang Shi to bring Wang Yao over. "Well, my grandson, how about you calculate it?" Wang Changwei's broken teeth ground together with a grinding sound, startling Wang Yao, who trembled as he took the ledger. The scene suddenly fell silent. The clerk stroked his beard and watched calmly. After a long moment, the hand holding the ledger began to tremble slightly, and his expression grew more strained. The crowd started to stir, and Wang Changgui's face slowly stiffened. Wang Yao couldn't hold on anymore. He gave Wang Ping a despairing look, threw the ledger onto the grain sack, and burst into loud wails. I can't do it. I just can't. Everyone was startled by Wang Yao's sudden outburst. Time seemed to stand still as the adults looked at him in confusion. But suddenly, a little girl held in her mother's arms, with her finger in her mouth, pointed at Wang Yao and burst out laughing, breaking the strange atmosphere. "Ha, Mom," he's crying. "Don't talk nonsense." The woman lightly slapped the little girl on the bottom and looked at Wang Changgui with an embarrassed expression. In an instant, all the children present started making a ruckus. Earlier, because of Wang Yao, their bottoms had all been punished by their parents. Although they didn't know why Wang Yao was crying, it felt like he had finally gotten back at them. Several children jumped up and down, pointing at Wang Yao and laughing loudly. But before they could gloat for long, they heard a few more whooshing sound from behind and felt kicks on their bottoms again. Rubbing their sore rears, they walked back to their parents' sides in disappointment. Wang Ping pressed his forehead, looking utterly helpless. Wang Changgui and Wang Shi frowned deeply. Wang Changgui stared at Wang Yao, even suspecting he had misheard. "Yao, what did you say?" Wang Yao looked up at Wang Changgui with tear-filled eyes, then sobbed quietly. "Grandpa, I can't." "Can't what?" Wang Changgui slapped his thigh in frustration. Wang Yao took a deep breath, summoned his courage, and blurted it out. He couldn't hold it in any longer. I can't count." "What?" Wang Changgui staggered back 2 steps, caught by Wang Shi. Still unable to believe it, he asked stubbornly, unable to give up. "Then tell Grandpa. How did you figure out those land taxes earlier?" By this point, most people present understood. So Wang Yao, the one they thought was clever, hadn't actually calculated those taxes, someone else had done it. Several constables gaped in shock. Zhang Taidan looked at Wang Yao with an awkward expression. Among those present, only the clerk remained smiling, calmly watching the scene unfold. As Wang Yao kept glancing at Wang Ping, old Wang suddenly had a thought that seemed too absurd to believe. There's no way Pinger helped Wang Yao with this calculation. Pinger has only studied with Wang Yao for a few days, and no one taught him. It's impossible he couldn't have worked it out. Before old Wang could dismiss this ridiculous notion, Wang Yao pointed at Wang Ping with an apologetic expression. Wang Ping calculated it for me." At this, everyone was stunned. They stared blankly at Wang Ping, not expecting such news to come out of this sightseeing. Wang Changgui looked at Wang Ping in disbelief, then waved his hand with a forced smile. Don't joke around. I know Wang Ping has studied with you for a few days. But smart as he is, how could he grasp all this in just a few days? If he really did, he'd be the top scholar. Enough, I won't pressure you. Go rest. The taxes on old Wang's land will be calculated by the officer himself. What do you think, officer? The clerk smiled and nodded. Wang Yao was anxious. After all, he was just a 5-year-old child with a childish nature. Hearing that his grandfather didn't believe him, he became impatient. "Grandpa, it really was Wang Ping who solved it. And I even promised to give him candy. That Wang Ping is too smart. I lent him my books, and within a few days, he solved all those arithmetic problems that were giving me trouble." He spoke with some indignation. Clearly, the past few days' interaction had frightened the little fatty with Wang Ping's terrifying talent. Wang Ping looked embarrassed, but Wang Xiang, upon hearing such good news, kept looking at Wang Ping and chuckling. "So you mean it was Wang Ping who wrote those arithmetic problems for you?" Wang Changgui's vision went dark, and he nearly fainted. If not for Wang Shi holding him up, Wang Changgui would have wanted to go over and kick Wang Ping twice. This wasteful kid, how could he say that in front of so many people? As soon as Wang Yao spoke, he realized he had slipped up, quickly covering his mouth with his hand and lowering his head in shame. The people in the crowd changed expression upon hearing Wang Yao's words. Some among them had indeed seen Wang Yao and Wang Ping together before, but it had only been a few days. How could Wang Ping already solve things that even Wang Yao couldn't? Old man Wang looked at Wang Ping, unable to help recalling Wang Youfa's words again, his heart extremely conflicted. Meanwhile, the clerk beside them watched the whole farce with a chuckle, then turned to Wang Ping and asked, "So these land taxes were calculated by you?" Wang Ping looked at the crowd, nodding then shaking his head. The clerk was confused. "The results were indeed computed by me, But the dozens of outcomes were all memorized by Wang Yao in just a few breaths. A few breaths. Wang Ping nodded solemnly. Only then did the clerk show surprise, both at Wang Ping and Wang Yao. He believed that after this incident, Wang Ping wouldn't dare deceive him again. As for Wang Yao, being strictly demanded by his elders to the point of developing rebellious feelings was understandable, but the talent of these two children in Wang family village truly made him somewhat envious. Looking at Wang Changui, the clerk smiled and shook his head. "Old man, don't be sad." Although this child lied, being able to clearly remember so many land tax results in just a few breaths is truly extraordinary. As long as he is encouraged more in the future, he will achieve something. Wang Changui nodded, propped himself up, and stood. He had just figured things out. Originally, having Wang Yao study was just to let him learn to read and find a livelihood. Now, even though his arithmetic is not that strong, discovering other talents is also good fortune for the Wang Changui family. He waved his hand to call Wang Yao over, and his rough hand gently brushed across Wang Yao's tender face. Wang Yao's heart ached, and he knelt down. "Grandfather." Wang Changui smiled and spoke in a hoarse voice. "Yair, you must study hard from now on." "I will." Yair vowed. Seeing this, the clerk nodded, then looked at Wang Ping and the old man Wang behind him, took out a ledger, and shook it at Wang Ping. "Boy, dare you try another arithmetic problem?" Wang Ping understood what the other meant it might be his chance to study, so he nodded. After the clerk randomly picked a field's tax, Wang Ping quickly recited the answer. The clerk was surprised and then nodded. The crowd gasped in astonishment. Old man Wang stared blankly at his two sons. Seeing old man Wang's expression, they didn't say much. Soon, bags of grain were loaded and sent onto the donkey cart. The clerk left, but as he left, he said to old man Wang, "This child should not be grubbing for food in the soil." Wang Yao also left, but this time, wiping away tears, he cast a grateful glance at Wang Ping before heading not home, but pulling Wang Changui along to follow the clerk's steps. He wanted to calculate, to catch up on all that he had missed while fooling around. Before leaving, Wang Changui patted Wang Ping's head and let out a deep sigh toward Wang Changui. "Old brother, do you still remember what that Taoist said?" Everyone had left. Zhao and the others, who had been in the main room, came out and looked at the statue like old Wang, the silent Wang brothers, the beaming Wang Xiang, and Wang Ping, who was looking up at them all exchanging bewildered glances. After a long moment, old Wang let out a breath, regained his authority as the head of the family, and spoke slowly but firmly. "Go back to the room and discuss the matter of Pinger's education." After saying this, old Wang did not wait for anyone to respond. He put his hands behind his back and walked into the main room on his own. The matter of education? Zhang, though she did not understand what had just happened, felt a hint of joy in her heart upon hearing old Wang's words, but her face remained calm. "Alas, let us go." Zhao Shi looked at He Shi's stiff face and Wang Xiang, who was still happily celebrating for Wang Ping. She shook her head and sighed helplessly. This day had finally come. Wang Youfa glanced at his elder brother Wang Yingxiong. Wang Yingxiong's face showed no major change, as usual, but Wang Youfa still sensed something off in his brother's mood. Wang Yingxiong noticed Wang Youfa staring at him, forced a stiff smile at the corner of his mouth, and pretended to be relaxed as he patted Wang Youfa's arm. "Come on, let us go in too. Our family is going to have a scala now." Before Wang Youfa could speak, Wang Yingxiong, just like in their childhood, pushed her by the arm and walked step by step toward the main house. Sister-in-law. Zhang Shi looked at He Shi with a hint of guilt. He Shi remained frozen in place, not responding. After a while, she touched Wang Xiang's head again, her eyes suddenly reddening. Then, she gave a gentle smile to Wang Ping, who was watching her with concern, and pulled Wang Xiang into the house. Zhang Shi felt a pang of sadness as she watched He Shi and Wang Xiang's retreating figures, but her gaze was resolute. She took Wang Ping's hand and walked inside. In the main room, a small square wooden table sat in the center. It was crafted by old man Wang himself, and the table carried many warm childhood memories for Wang Ping. Arriving in this world and joining the Wang family, he felt he was very fortunate. But today, which should have been a day of laughter and rest after paying the annual agricultural tax, the atmosphere in the main room was unusually tense. Old man Wang had already taken the seat of honor. Grandma Zhao, carrying a small wooden stool, sat slightly behind and to the side, watching everyone with concern. Wang Youfa and Wang Yingxiong and his wife, he sat on opposite sides of the small table, without speaking. Zhang gave a glance, and then sat beside Wang Youfa. The two younger wives lowered their heads, lost in thought. The two sisters, sensing the tense atmosphere, had long since quietly moved their stools behind Wang Xiang, not far from the door. The remaining empty seat at the small table was the last one. It was reserved for Wang Ping, because he was the focus of today's events. Everyone in the room looked at Wang Ping in unison. Gazing at his family, Wang Ping knew in his heart that this might be the final hurdle for his chance to study. Taking a deep breath, Wang Ping bowed to everyone in the room and then slowly sat down. Seeing Wang Ping seated, old Wang cleared his throat. Since everyone is here, let's all speak our minds. What do you all think about Wang Ping's schooling? As soon as old Wang threw out the topic, the table went silent. Wang Ping was of the younger generation, though over the years he had earned a reputation for being sensible, polite, and having his own opinions. He had no say in such occasions. So he quietly watched everyone's reactions. Zhang Shi secretly nudged Wang Youfa. With an apologetic glance at Wang Yingxiong, Wang Youfa spoke up. "Father, big brother, you saw what happened today? Wang Ping only studied a few days with that eldest son of Uncle Changue, and he could already calculate the land taxes for so many families. If Wang Ping could actually attend school for a while, couldn't he become a scholar or something? Even if not, based on his performance today, in a few years he'd definitely have no problem becoming a bookkeeper in town. And from what that official said, our Wang Ping is quite gifted. My thought is I want Wang Ping to study." Seeing old Wang silent, Zhang Shi roughly guessed his intention and picked up the thread. "Exactly. Although I don't know what happened today, Pinger has been different from others since he was little. Besides, didn't a Taoist say his future would be extraordinary? We always call scholars the literary star in the sky. I think our Pinger's background is also unusual. He might be a literary star too." After hearing them out, old Wang nodded and looked at Wang Yingxiong and his wife. "Eldest, what's your family's opinion?" Wang Yingxiong nodded. "I agree." He sure had nothing more to say. So she also nodded. "I also agree." "Good. Then it's settled. In a few days, we'll find a time to send Pinger to school." Old Wang stroked his chin and smiled, finalizing the matter. Wang Youfa and Zhang Shi hadn't expected the eldest brother and his wife to agree so quickly, and they were filled with gratitude. But what about the money for Pinger's schooling? I heard the village head's child spend a lot on studying. Grandma Zhao spoke with worry. Upon hearing this, old Wang also showed a worried expression, but Wang Youfa and Zhang Shi smiled in response. "Father, mother, you can rest assured about this. I've discussed it with Youfa. The autumn harvest is over, and in a few days he'll go to the town or the county to do manual labor, earning 10 to 20 a day. I'll look for some embroidery orders, and in winter I'll take on some laundry work while Youfa goes up the mountain to chop firewood. There's always a way. If it really doesn't work out, we'll borrow from my brother and sister-in-law, but we'll definitely sign an IOU. We wouldn't dare let them pay out of pocket for nothing," Zhang said cheerfully, as if the work she mentioned was effortless. Wang Ping's eyes gradually reddened, and he silently vowed to study hard, while the idea of earning money also sprouted in his mind.